Alright guys, I just want to preface this video by saying at around the 15-minute and 30-second mark, I had a huge brain fart. I was talking about the protein enzyme mTOR, and I totally blanked on what mTOR stands for. mTOR stands for the mammalian target of rapamycin, and it's just the major protein, muscle protein synthesis enzyme that occurs in the body. YouTube doesn't allow annotations anymore, which I didn't know. So the only way for me to edit the video, so to say, and let you know that I messed up is to make this short little clip and put it before the video. So sorry for that. After watching it back and realizing that I messed up, I really didn't want to have to redo the whole 30-minute long video. I've already recorded the protein video like 6 times, and I was sick of doing it over. So I'm just gonna put this in. Won't happen again. Sorry. Alright guys, what's up? First things first, if you hear a sound in the background, like a little humming noise, or you see like some water vapor or something coming up in front of my face, that's a humidifier that I have running in my room. It is fucking snowing in April here in Illinois, and I'm very prone to nosebleeds, and if I don't have a humidifier running all the time, it will literally look like an exorcism or some shit happened. I'll get a nosebleed like in the middle of making this video, and neither of us want that. So that's why I got the humidifier going, so I apologize if you hear the sound. Second, thanks for watching the first 2 or 3 videos of the series. I've had a couple people in the gym come up and tell me that they've been watching my stuff and they really like it, and I've had a couple people message me on Instagram that they like my stuff and might want to see more, so that's really cool. Obviously nothing crazy. I'm just kind of here to teach people right now, really. Not really trying to make something crazy out of this, just trying to help people out. So today we're going to talk about protein. It's going to be the final macronutrient out of the 3. We've already talked about carbs and fats. If you haven't seen that already, go check those out. Just click on my channel link below and go to videos and watch them. But today we're going to talk about protein. And to start things off, protein is by far the most important macronutrient out of the 3. It's so important, in fact, that the name protein is actually derived from the Greek word protos, P-R-O-T-O-S. And protos in Greek means first element or initial element. So whoever named protein obviously thought that it was so important and so vital that they named it after the first element, the initial element that everything is made of. So just keep that in mind when I talk about protein and how important protein is, not only for bodybuilders and physique athletes and powerlifters, whatever, but for just everybody. Everybody needs to be consuming protein in an adequate amount. So the difference between proteins and carbs and fats, when you look at them molecularly, proteins contain hydrogen and carbon just like carbs and fats do, but the difference between protein is that protein contains nitrogen and its atomic structure. And this is really important for understanding nitrogen balance of an athlete. And just, I don't really want to get too deep into nitrogen balance. This is a very complex system. You can Google it and look everything up on your own if you want to know the details, but to touch on it briefly, nitrogen balance is going to be a constant battle between the nitrogen that you're consuming and the nitrogen that you're leaving the body, that the bot is leaving the body. I'll put it that way. Nitrogen coming in versus nitrogen coming out. There's many different ways that nitrogen leaves the body. I won't get into those because some of them are kind of nasty and stuff like that. So I don't really want to talk about too much about how to lose nitrogen. But because protein is the only macronutrient that contains nitrogen, it's obvious to see that the way that we consume nitrogen is by consuming protein. We need to be consuming protein consistently and constantly throughout the day. Think of your nitrogen balance as kind of like a scale. If you've ever seen one of those like old-fashioned scales, they have I don't know, they kind of look like one of these, and then there's like something in the middle. This is terrible. And then you've got the nitrogen coming in and then the nitrogen coming out, and it's tipping the scale one way or the other. You obviously want the nitrogen that you're taking in to be higher than the nitrogen that's leaving the body. What that does is it promotes anabolism, and that it promotes growth in the body. If you're consuming more nitrogen than you're leaving, you're going to be in a positive nitrogen balance, and that's going to promote muscle growth and cellular growth and everything along those lines. So if you ever hear an athlete or a coach talking about having a positive nitrogen balance, that's what they're talking about, is consuming enough protein to put their nitrogen balance scale, so to say, in a positive way that's going to promote anabolism and growth. Proteins are made up of simple units that we refer to as amino acids. There are 20 different amino acids. I'm not going to get into all the amino acids. There are 3 specifically that I'm going to get into, and then out of those 3, there's one that I'm going to kind of go a little bit more in depth in, because I think it is by far the most important amino acid out of the 20. But I really don't want to get too much into the difference of all 20 amino acids and what they do. But what I do want to talk about is how these amino acids are structured. So when you look at a protein, the protein is made up of what we call a peptide or a peptide chain. And what these peptides are is they're just chains of amino acids that are strung together in different orders and different amounts of each. The most important thing about the protein that you're eating in your diet is going to be the organization and the structure of these peptide chains. Depending on the order of the amino acids within the peptide chain, how much of each amino acid is in the peptide chain, that's going to determine the quality and how the protein digests in your body and what it's used for. That's why it's important, I'll talk about this later, to consume a variety of protein sources. Don't just keep one protein source in your diet. You want to have a variety, because different kinds of protein sources have different kinds of amino acid profiles and different peptide chains, which are going to have different protein qualities and are going to affect the body differently. So I'll get into that later. Don't think about that too much now. I will get into that later though. Protein is primarily synthesized in the liver, where the liver will release 20% of the amino acids that you eat into the bloodstream to be synthesized by lean tissue. So for example, if you eat, let's just say 50 grams of protein, about 20% of the amino acids that are in that protein are going to be released by the liver into your bloodstream. Now, out of that 20%, out of that small chunk that gets released into the bloodstream, 75% of those amino acids are going to be what we call the branched chained amino acids, or the BCAAs. And those 3 BCAAs are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. In my opinion, by far the 3 most important amino acids out of the 20. They're very heavily concentrated in skeletal muscle tissue. If you look at like the breakdown, anatomical medical breakdown of skeletal muscle tissue, the majority of the amino acids that are in a muscle, like a bicep or a tricep or something, are the branched chain amino acids. So they're very important and very crucial for muscle growth and muscle protein synthesis. I'll get into leucine a bit later, because leucine is kind of the king of all the amino acids, and I'll get into that in a bit more detail and talk about what it does specifically. These 3 amino acids are digested and ingested, so to say, much faster than all the other amino acids. So, for example, some of the other amino acids are tyrosine, arginine, histidine, tryptophan, whatever. Not really important, but the point I'm trying to get is those 3 amino acids are ingested significantly faster than those other amino acids. There are 9 amino acids that are considered essential, meaning that they cannot be produced by the body. The branched chain amino acids are 3 of those 9. If you want to look up all 9 of the essential amino acids, you can look it up on Google. That's why I'm a big fan of, instead of taking BCAA supplements, I'm a big fan of taking EAA supplements. That's a topic for another day. I'm not going to get into that today. Eventually, I'm probably going to make a video about intra-workout nutrition, and that video I'll talk about the difference between BCAAs and EAAs and why you should be taking EAAs instead of BCAAs. But the other 11 amino acids are what we call non-essential, and the body can produce them on its own. So now that these branched chain amino acids have been synthesized by the liver and are now transported into the bloodstream, they're going to make up what we call the plasma amino acid pool. And what the plasma amino acid pool is it's literally a pool of amino acids that's located in your bloodstream, and it's constantly exchanging amino acids and proteins with your skeletal muscle tissue and what's inside the plasma amino acid pool. So what that means is it's constantly exchanging the old amino acids and replacing them with new amino acids. So you can think of it as like an out with the old, in with the new type thing. The old, I don't want to say dead, but the old unuseful, useless amino acids are replaced with new amino acids when you eat protein, the amino acids that are placed in this pool that's inside your blood. That's why it's important to be consuming protein frequently and constantly throughout the day, because then you'll constantly be replenishing that amino acid pool, and you're going to constantly be exchanging amino acids within the body to promote growth and anabolism. These amino acids are going to be delivered what I like to call target tissue, and what the target tissue is it's kind of what it sounds like. There's certain tissues in the body at certain times of the day that need more amino acids than other ones, and the body is very smart, and it's going to transport these amino acids into the target tissue to try and heal the target tissue, try and prevent that target tissue from breaking down, etc., etc. Which is why I personally am a big fan of consuming protein as soon as possible post workout. I think in that sense, even though some may consider it bro science, that at that particular time of the day, the torn down muscle tissue would be what would the body would refer to as target tissue, and I believe that those amino acids are going to be shuttled into that particular muscle much faster than any other tissue in the body at that particular time. So now that we kind of understand basically how protein works in the body and its molecular structure, etc., I want to talk about why protein is so important, not just for bodybuilders and power athletes, whatever, but for everyday people. And that is the simple fact that protein makes up everything in your body. Not only does it make up the skeletal muscle tissue, like your biceps, your quads, whatever, it makes up literally everything in your body. Your teeth, your hair, your skin, your nails are all made up of protein. A lot of the hormones and the enzymes that go on the inside of your body are made up of dietary protein. Now, there's different kinds of dietary proteins. There's what we call contractile proteins and fibrous proteins. Don't want to get too much into the difference between the two of them, because that's kind of like a chemistry lesson or an anatomy lesson that I don't really want to get into. Just know that the basic structure of everything in your body is made up of protein, different kinds. But you do need to be consuming protein to promote hair growth, skin health, teeth. You can see it's really important that if everything in your body is made up of protein, you need to consistently be consuming protein to give those particular structures the building blocks that they need to be healthy and to continue to grow. All of the antibodies in your body are made up of protein. The things that fight disease, it's all made up of dietary protein. So if you're not making a conscious effort to be eating protein, you're missing out on a lot of the benefits of fighting off disease and just promoting overall bodily growth, I could say. Again, not just muscle, but skin, hair, teeth, nails, etc. It's important to understand, because I talked about carbohydrates. And if you're not eating carbohydrates, the body can make its own glucose. It can make the glucose that it needs to survive. But if you're not eating protein, the body has no metabolic processes that will create its own amino acids. So if you're not consuming protein, the body can't make the amino acids on its own. They have to be eaten. So you're really missing out if you're not making a conscious effort to consume protein. And that's going to be the main difference with protein between fats and carbohydrates. You can go out anywhere, any grocery store, any restaurant, anywhere, and you can order something, and it's probably going to be pretty high in carbs and or fats, and you don't really have to try to eat carbs and fats, as I guess what I'm saying. But in order to get protein, and that's a conscious effort, you have to make a conscious effort to pick food items that are high in protein, because if you don't, a lot of things like, say, oatmeal may have 5 grams of protein per serving, but that's by far not enough. Speaking of how much protein the body needs, that is a questionable debate, and that is something that is constantly debated on, especially in the bodybuilding industry. Some people will say 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight is fine. Some people will say 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is fine. Some people will say 2 grams of protein per body weight is fine. The formula that I have always used, and the one that I've always stuck to, and the one that I use with all of my athletes and with myself, as I go with anywhere between 1.5 to 1.7 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass, not per pound of body weight. In the next video where I talk about like setting up a diet and how I try to set up diets for myself and for my clients, I'll talk about that, how to find the lean body mass and then how to calculate the protein from that. But just understand that it is going to be a bit higher than the 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, because I think I think that normal everyday people should be consuming 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, but I think us as bodybuilders and aerobic weightlifters, we should be consuming more. I think that our central nervous system and our skeletal muscle is in higher demand of amino acids than everyday people, so to say. So we need to be consuming more protein than them. I know a lot of people that disagree with that, and that's fine. Just by doing this sort of formula, I guess you could say, it's proven a lot of success for me. And if it's not broke, I don't fix it. So I keep running with it. So I want to quickly get into leucine specifically before I talk about the protein sources that I recommend that you should be eating. Leucine is the major amino acid out of the 20, in my opinion. It's what I like to call the metabolic trigger. And what consuming leucine does, when you consume leucine, about 3 grams of leucine, what you're going to do is you're going to trigger a protein enzyme called mTOR. I believe mTOR stands for the mammalian theory. I don't remember. But mTOR is an extremely important enzyme. It is the #1 enzyme that turns on muscle protein synthesis, aka building new muscle. How much leucine do you need to initiate and turn on mTOR? You need about 3 grams of leucine, bare minimum. To get a general idea of how much protein that is, roughly 10 grams of protein contains 1 gram of leucine. So in order to get enough protein to be turning on mTOR, you need to be consuming at least 30 grams of protein per serving. So you'll see with each meal, as I go through a sample diet in my next video, each meal is never going to have any less than 30 grams of protein per meal. Because in my opinion, if you're consuming protein in any amount less than 30 grams, that's not worth your time. Consuming protein any less than 30 grams, you're not going to be getting enough leucine to turn on mTOR, which means you're not going to be getting enough protein to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, which means you're not going to be getting enough protein to promote growth and constantly be in an anabolic state. Again, I know a lot of people that disagree with that. They just say as long as you get your total protein in at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Whether that's 20 meals of 10 grams of protein or 2 meals of 100 grams of protein, it doesn't matter. I've just found what works best for me and what works best for a lot of my clients is to be eating, I would say, medium amount of protein, 35 to 45 grams per meal consistently throughout the day. In my opinion, that keeps the engine running, that keeps mTOR consistently running throughout the day, and is going to put your body, in my opinion, to be in its best potential state to promote anabolism. So now that we kind of have a general idea of protein, what it does, how much you need, etc., let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. What are the protein sources that you should be consuming as an athlete or as an everyday person? I think, cost aside, by far the best protein source that you can possibly get is steak. Steak is obviously a lot more expensive than other protein sources, but I think this is a situation of you get what you pay for. Steak has a lot more iron, zinc, potassium, B vitamins, specifically vitamin B6 and 12, than any other protein source. It's more than chicken, it's more than turkey, it's more than fish. I think if you have the funds to do so, you should be consuming steak at least once a day, more if you have the option. I know Stan Efferding, who is a professional. He used to be a professional powerlifter and bodybuilder, and now he coaches some of the world's best athletes. He coaches a lot of the strongmen. All of his athletes, all they eat is white rice and steak for every single meal, and I think that there's a lot of merit to that. I think that steak is by far the best protein source that you can buy if you have the funds to do so. Even if you don't have the funds to do so, I recommend people buy the cheapest cut of steak that they can find, and they trim all the fat off, and so that they can still get the benefits of steak. I'm a big fan of red meat. It seems kind of bro sciency, but I do think that red meat is such a great protein source. It contains more creatine, again, iron, zinc, potassium, B vitamins than chicken or turkey, etc., etc. I do try to stay away from ground beef. The main reason why I stay away from ground beef is because ground beef is a mixture of ground chuck, ground sirloin, and ground round. So it's these three different cuts of red meat that are kind of mixed together. I think if you want a red meat that isn't steak, you're better off choosing either ground chuck, ground sirloin, or ground round. I like sirloin personally, and just going with one of those. Don't get ground beef. It's just a mixture of the three. If that's all you have money to get is ground beef, then go for it. It's obviously better than nothing. But I am a big advocate of getting at least one red meat meal in a day, sometimes even more. I think red meat is going to be the best bang for your buck as far as protein sources. Covering the grass-fed debate, I tend to buy grass-fed red meat, not because I think it's healthier or anything. I do think that it tastes better and it digests better for me. So I do like to eat um, the grass-fed red meats, whether it's grass-fed steak or grass-fed sirloin. I do tend to buy those more than just a non-grass-fed, the cheaper versions of red meat. Again, simply for taste and digestibility, if that's even a word. I do think that that's the way to go if you have the funds. It's only like, um, for me, where I get my red meat, I think it's like 93% ground sirloin is like five something a pound, and then the grass fed version 93% is like six something a pound. So it's only $1 more per pound. To me, it's worth it. Tastes a lot better, digests a lot better. So that's how I tend to go. Another really good protein source is poultry, specifically chicken and turkey. I'm a big fan of chicken. I still eat chicken at least once a day. I think that chicken is great because chicken is dirt cheap. At a lot of grocery stores now, you can get chicken for $2 a pound, which is dirt cheap. Yeah, I generally tend to buy it in bulk and then freeze it, so you can kind of get the most out of your money and not have to constantly be running to the grocery store to get more chicken. Another thing that I think is great about chicken is that chicken is extremely versatile. I'm somebody who can eat my food pretty plain. I don't need a lot of spices or condiments or anything to make my food taste good. But I do know a lot of people that they need some sort of condiment or seasoning or spice to make their food palatable. And in that situation, I think that chicken is by far the best. You can make spicy chicken, you can make barbecue chicken, you can make garlic chicken, you can make Asian chicken, you can make salsa chicken. You can make tons and tons and tons of different kinds of chicken. Sorry, I keep itching my nose, man. This dry air is killing me. But again, I think that chicken is going to be the most versatile and by far the cheapest protein source that you can buy. Turkey isn't bad. I am eating turkey once a day right now. The thing with turkey is that turkey just isn't really that great. It doesn't taste that good in my opinion. I've yet to find some sort of seasoning or condiment or something that I can put on ground turkey breast that makes it taste really good. I mean, I can get through it, but it's just not that great. So chicken, turkey, I think when you're looking at poultry, those are going to be by far the best protein sources there in that specific category. Now let's look at fish. Fish is something that gets used a lot in the bodybuilding scene, specifically towards the end of a contest prep. You'll throw in a whitefish as the main protein source, like cod or tilapia, because it's so lean. Even the leanest cuts of chicken still have 2 or 3 grams of fat per serving, but white fish like cod or tilapia is it's completely fat free. It has no fat in it at all, so it's about as lean of a protein as you can get aside from maybe egg whites. But white fish, like again, cod or tilapia, are by far going to be the best protein sources towards the end of a prep. I'm not really a big fan of tilapia. Tilapia is a very low quality fish. A tilapia fish, its diet that it eats growing up, it doesn't really eat much of anything. A lot of tilapia eat dirt, and in my opinion, if I'm eating something whose its main diet was dirt, there's probably not a whole lot of nutrients or anything that's going to be in the tilapia that's going to benefit my body. It's just going to give me kind of like a cheap, low quality protein source. And I do look at nutrients as well as the the macronutrient profile. I don't want to get something that just has a lot of protein in it, but is kind of low quality. So I'm not really a fan of tilapia. I do prefer cod or flounder or orange roughy towards the end of a prep. But in an off season and even in the majority of the prep, the main fish of choice is going to be salmon, specifically wild caught salmon. If you remember back in my fat video, I talked about omega-3s and omega-6s. That are fatty acids that the body cannot produce on its own. Salmon is a fantastic, fantastic source of those essential fatty acids. It is by far the fish that has the most essential fatty acid profile in it. So I do recommend right now, me personally, in my off season, I'm eating salmon twice a week. And that's generally how I recommend it to the majority of my clients is eat salmon at least once or twice a week. Salmon is pretty expensive. It's just as expensive as steak, which is another reason why I only condone eating it like twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. Another reason for that is I do think that consuming fish constantly, like almost every day, kind of puts you at a high risk for mercury poisoning unless you're eating a wild-caught fish. But again, wild-caught fish, specifically wild-caught salmon, is pretty expensive. So that's why I tend to eat salmon a little bit less. It's a higher fat fish, so it's going to be more calorically dense. So it's great for an off season if you're having trouble gaining weight, eating some fattier protein sources. And again, it's very beneficial to the body and contains a lot of great essential fatty acids that you're missing out on from anything else. Eggs and egg whites. A lot of people, for whatever reason, are scared of whole eggs. If you remember the fat video, I talked about whole eggs having a lot of good fats in the yolk. Specifically, they're very high in HDL cholesterol, which has been proven to elevate and help maintain your free-range testosterone levels, which is fantastic if you're a bodybuilder or power lifter. Another great thing about eggs is they're dirt cheap. You can go to Walmart and get 18 eggs for like 80 cents. You can get a dozen eggs for like 49 cents. If I was completely broke, I would be eating eggs and oatmeal because they're both so cheap. You can obviously, if you're on a calorically restricted diet and you don't need that many fats, you can sift the yolks out and eat the egg whites. In my opinion, egg whites are kind of just like tilapia. They're kind of just like a cheap, low-quality source of protein. There's not a whole lot of nutrients or vitamins in an egg white, but they will get you your protein. And I do eat egg whites personally at least once a day, just because I need to get some higher amounts of protein in. So I go for egg whites. You can buy the egg whites in the carton, or you can just buy a bunch of whole eggs and just sift out the yolks and do that. I tend to get the liquid egg whites just because I feel like if I'm using whole eggs and throwing the yolk out, I'm wasting it. But eggs and egg whites are another great protein source that I recommend people eat at least once a day, sometimes more. If you're on a really tight budget, you're probably going to be eating a lot of eggs because they're so cheap. Whey protein, very popular one, specifically in the supplement industry. Obviously, the two main kinds of protein, whey protein, are going to be whey protein concentrate and whey protein isolate. The main difference between the two is that whey protein concentrate contains lactose, and whey protein isolate does contain lactose, but quite a bit less. Isolate's also generally lower in calories because it has a lot less carbs and fat in it. So if you're on a calorically restricted diet, isolate may be the way to go. I tend to use isolate personally. I don't like to use whey too much. I think, again, aside from just getting protein in. It's very similar to egg whites and tilapia, where there's just not a whole lot of nutrients and stuff in it. I tend to get the majority of my protein in from solid nutrient dense food sources like eggs and chicken and steak and red meat, etc. But whey protein, if you're having trouble getting in enough protein, whey protein is a great supplement or alternative to use. You can mix it with a lot of things. You can make shakes. It's very versatile. If you have a lactose intolerance, I would try isolate. If you still can't handle isolate, then you're kind of screwed, because whey protein is technically a dairy byproduct. So if you have issues with dairy and lactose, then you're kind of screwed when it comes to whey protein. Speaking of dairy and lactose, the final source of protein that I recommend is casein protein. Casein protein is protein that comes from dairy sources, specifically cottage cheese, Greek yogurt. They also make casein powders that you can make in a shake. The main advantage of taking casein protein is that it digests much slower than regular protein. So in my opinion, it is by far the perfect protein source to take before bed. I eat a lot of Greek yogurt before bed to get a lot of protein in from casein, because the protein is slower digesting, and in my opinion, that keeps the body and the brain and the muscles fed throughout the night while you're sleeping, which is when your body is recovering. So I'm a big advocate of taking in some sort of dairy protein casein source before bed if it digests with the athlete. Again, a lot of people are lactose intolerant. They can't take dairy protein, but if you can, I'm a big fan of throwing in some sort of casein protein, especially before bed. So yeah, hopefully you guys like the video. This is the final macronutrient out of the 3. This is protein instead of carbs and fats. Next video, I'm going to be going over a sample diet and how if an athlete were to come to me, how would I set up their diet? Hopefully give you guys some insight on what you can do to kind of make some tweaks and fine-tune adjustments to your diet to improve your performance and maybe get some gains. All right, guys, have a good one.